Historical figures who lived long enough to be photographed. Photography was developed in 1827, allowing us to see photos of important people over the last 200 years. You're about to see many important and historical figures who lived long enough to be photographed. Nikola Tesla. Although Nikola Tesla came from a family with mental issues, he was still a genius and a famed inventor and engineer. Over the years, Nikola developed the alternating current power system that provides electricity for homes and buildings, so you can thank him the next time you turn on a light. He also pioneered the field of radio communication and was granted over 100 U.S. patents. Annie Oakley. Annie Oakley was born Phoebe Ann Mosey and was a sharpshooter as a child to feed her family. When she was 15, she won a sharpshooting contest. Annie got her big break on Buffalo Bill's Wild West show and was the second highest paid actor. Annie was a beautiful woman who found a way to make her way in a man's profession and has gone down in history as one of the best sharpshooters in the world. Charles Darwin. Charles Darwin believed that all species share a common ancestor, but his theory contradicted the religious beliefs of the time and is integral to modern science. He's best known for his book On the Origin of the Species, and his theories are taught in schools and universities today. Butch Cassidy. Butch Cassidy was an Old West train robber who led a criminal organization called the Wild Bunch. It's believed that Butch died alongside his partner, Alonzo Longbow, also known as the Sundance Kid. The pair is believed to have been killed in a shootout with the Bolivian army after fleeing the country in 1908, and Butch and Sundance have been the subject of documentaries, movies, and TV shows. Vincent van Gogh. Vincent van Gogh was a Dutch post-impressionist artist who completed over 2,000 works in less than 10 years. The artist had psychotic delusions that led to his suicide in 1890. Van Gogh's work went largely unnoticed during his life, and today he's considered one of the pioneers of modern art and one of the most significant influences in Western history. Helen Keller. Helen Keller developed an illness as an infant that caused her to lose her hearing and sight. In those days, those who were deaf and blind weren't expected to succeed in life. Helen worked with her life partner, Anne Sullivan, and learned communication and literacy using sign language. Anne's help helped Helen achieve more than those who could see and hear, and she wrote over 14 books. Helen also became the first deaf and blind graduate from Harvard University. Charles Dickens. Charles Dickens was bipolar and had severe depression, but that didn't stop him from writing some of the greatest classics in history, such as Tale of Two Cities and Oliver Twist. Sadly, his mental health issues continued until he died in 1870. Calamity Jane. Like Annie Oakley, Calamity Jane was a legendary Wild West frontierswoman and sharpshooter. Like Annie, she performed in Buffalo Bill's Wild West show and was known for her distinctive personality. She was also known for her compassion and for wearing men's clothes. Harriet Tubman. Harriet Tubman was a runaway slave who went on to do some wonderful things. She was an Army scout and a Union Army spy and helped slaves who struggled the way she did. Harriet created the Underground Railroad, a network of safe havens provided by those who didn't believe in slavery, and Harriet helped many slaves escape. According to Harriet's own words, she helped about 70 people during 13 trips to Maryland. Ernest Hemingway. Ernest Hemingway was a major influence on 20th century literature and has written some of the greatest novels in history. Many of his books have become classics, such as For Whom the Bell Tolls, The Old Man and the Sea, and Farewell to Arms. The Wright Brothers. Orville and Wilbur Wright were mechanics who built the first successful airplane called the Wright Flyer in 1903. They also designed controls that made travel by air possible. The next time you get on a plane, you can thank Orville and Wilbur Wright. Billy the Kid. Billy the Kid is an outlaw of the Old West. He was orphaned as a teenager and engaged in criminal activity to get by. He battled in New Mexico's Lincoln County when he was young and became a federal fugitive. Billy killed himself when he was 21, and it's believed he murdered 8 men, which is likely what led to his suicide. John Chapman, also known as Johnny Appleseed. John was a pioneer nurseryman and traveled around the country to showcase apple trees to settlements and give the leaders seeds. He was a leader in environmental conservation and was legendary long before his death. John helped spread apple seeds all over the United States, and you should thank him the next time you eat an apple. Ichabod Crane. You may recognize the name Ichabod Crane from Irving's novel The Legend of Sleepy Hollow. The real Ichabod Crane was a military officer in the U.S. Army and Marine Corps for over 48 years. George Armstrong Custer. Custer was an Army officer in the United States and graduated at the bottom of his class in West Point in 1861. Despite doing poorly at West Point, Custer became a worthy leader during the Civil War and was involved in the American Indian War. His military career and life were cut short when a band of Indians killed him at Little Bighorn. Today, the battle is known as Custer's Last Stand. Theodore Roosevelt. Theodore Teddy Roosevelt was the 26th President of the United States. He's responsible for the Square Deal, his democratic policy based on 3 ideas: protection for the consumer, conservation of natural resources, and control of large corporations. He's considered one of the best presidents to hold office, but based on his Square Deal, Teddy wouldn't be popular with today's Republicans. Geronimo. His name means the one who yawns, and he was a leader of the Bedonko band of the Apache tribe. He was an admired Native American who led raids against U.S. and Mexican soldiers. He made a living attending public functions while constantly fleeing the U.S. national reservations until he was captured. Daniel F. Bakerman. Daniel served in the Revolutionary Army, where he was a private for the Tryon County Militia. After leaving the military, Daniel settled down with Susan Brewer and had 8 children. He was also the oldest veteran to receive a pension for his time in the military. John Tyler. John Tyler was the vice president to William Henry Harrison, the 9th president of the United States. When President Harrison died in 1841, John Tyler took over as president until 1845. His politics were controversial, and some scholars praised him while others ranked him very low. Franklin Pierce. Franklin Pierce was the 14th president of the United States after winning the 1853 election. He was known for his political choices that led to the American Civil War and is known as one of the worst and least memorable presidents in history. Sylvia Plath. Sylvia was a famous novelist and poet, and her most famous works include The Colossus and Other Poems, The Bell Jar, and Ariel. Sylvia committed suicide in 1963 by sticking her head in the oven in her London home on February 11, 1963. Sadly, she didn't live long enough to enjoy winning her Pulitzer Prize for Poetry in 1982. Marie Curie. Marie Curie was a pioneering chemist and physician who coined the term radioactivity. She was also the first woman to win 2 Nobel Prizes, which was a considerable achievement for a woman back then. Robert E. Lee. Robert E. Lee was a general in the Confederate States of America during the American Civil War. He was known as an efficient strategist and later became the president of Washington College, which was later named after him. Over the last few years, statues of Robert E. Lee have been controversial, as they're considered racist because he fought against the end of slavery. Chief Seattle. Chief Seattle was a leader of the Duwamish and Squamish people and managed to assemble his people with Washington settlers, which was uncommon at the time. Thanks to his peaceful relations in the city, Seattle was named after him. James K. Polk. James K. Polk was the 11th President of the United States. He did a lot during his presidency and acquired more land by winning the American-Mexican War. Polk also implemented lower tariffs, which bolstered the executive branch. When President Polk's first term ended, he decided to step down and didn't run for re-election. Thanks to many things Polk did for the country, he's known today as a favorable leader. Grand Duchess Anastasia Nikolaevna. Anastasia was the daughter of the last Tsar of Imperial Russia, Nicholas II. Sadly, she died during the siege on the place in 1918, along with the rest of her family. Conrad Hare. Conrad was a farmer before becoming a soldier in the American Revolutionary War and fought in one of the most famous battles in U.S. history. He fought under George Washington during the famous battle while crossing the Delaware River. Conrad died at 106 and was recognized as one of the oldest men to be photographed. Ulysses S. Grant. Ulysses S. Grant was the 18th President of the United States, led the Union Army during the American Civil War, and is known as one of the best military leaders in American history. When his time as president ended, he traveled the world. Sir John Herschel. Sir John Herschel was a chemist, mathematician, and inventor. He also experimented with photography and created the first blueprint. John went on to name the 7 moons of Saturn and 4 moons of Uranus, a planet discovered by his father. Jefferson Davis. Jefferson Davis had many roles throughout his life. He was the President of the Confederate States from 1861 to 1865 and a Mississippi senator. He also served as Secretary of War under Pierce and fought in the Mexican-American War. Gregory Ivanovich Rasputin. Rasputin was a famed Russian mystic and worked for the Romanov family until he betrayed them. He created different versions of himself over the decades of popular culture. Frederick Douglass. Frederick Douglass was a 19th century political leader in Massachusetts and New York who managed to escape slavery and become a revolutionary abolitionist. Years later, he was nominated to become the Vice President of the USA, even though he didn't want to be the Vice President. Edvard Munch. Edvard suffered from anxiety and hallucinations, causing his peers to declare him insane. His troubles can be seen in many of his paintings, including The Scream in 1893. The artist checked himself into a clinic in 1908, seeking help for his mental health issues. Jack Kerouac. Jack Kerouac was a novelist with published work 40 years after his death. He was best known for his novel The Town and the City and influenced legendary artists including Bob Dylan. A creepy woman. The woman in this photo is known as a creepy woman because her name's unknown. It's believed this photo was taken in the late 19th century or early 20th century. Harriet Beecher Stowe. Harriet Beecher Stowe was an influential abolitionist and wrote over 30 books about social issues and her stance on them. Her novel, Uncle Tom's Cabin, inspired people to take a stand against slavery in the North. Leo Tolstoy. Tolstoy was a Russian writer and is one of the greatest writers of all time. His most famous works include Anna Karenina, War and Peace, and The Death of Ivan Ilyich. He was nominated for several Nobel Prizes in Literature and Nobel Peace Prizes in the 1900s. John Quincy Adams. John Quincy Adams was a successful politician. Before associating with the Whig Party in the 1830s, he was a member of the Democratic Republican Party. He was a prominent member of the U.S. Senate and the 6th President of the United States. He was also the oldest son of John Adams, the 2nd President of the United States.